Hi everyone, it's Dr. Dan Ritchie, president of the Functional Aging Institute with you here again, and we have got a lively webinar today with Greg Justice. I'm going to be handing over the controls to him here in just a second, I hope. Hold on just a second. It's not letting me change the presenter to you, Greg. Huh.
Do it in a TED-like format, so we'll hit a lot of points in about a 20-minute period of time, and then we'll open for some questions.
There we go. I think I threw it over there to you, Greg. So,
very good.
So let me just briefly introduce you before you take it away. So I actually finally just met Greg in Kansas City a few weeks ago. Been following his stuff for a couple of years now. He regularly writes for the PFP magazine. He's a best-selling author, speaker, and fitness entrepreneur. And he opened AYC Health and Fitness, Kansas City's original personal training center, back in May 1986. So you've been doing this just a little while, Greg. So I know you specialize in corporate wellness, personal small group fitness training. In fact, I'm holding your book, Lies and Myths About Corporate Wellness, and I know you're going to give us quite a few tips and tricks on the corporate fitness market. There are two handouts in the handouts area for people to download that Greg has provided. There's a corporate glossary and also a special report. So when he refers to that, you should be able to grab those in the handout area, and we will email those to those of you on the recording as well. So Greg, thanks so much for doing this. Take it away.
Hey, Dan, thank you so much for having me, and I will, let's see, have you got my screen up there now?
Yep, see it just fine.
Okay. Very good. We're going to put that in presenter mode right there, and we will get rolling. And again, thank you, Dan, for having me. It was a pleasure to meet you face-to-face. Of course, I've been following your career as well, and it was nice to meet you here in Kansas City a couple weeks ago at the Excel Wellness workshop that you did. So thank you for having me here. All right, as we get started here, you've all heard the saying that those who can do and those who can't teach, right? But what do those who can't teach do? Well, those who can't teach, of course, they teach PE, right? And I'll even take that one step further and ask you what those who can't teach PE do. Well, the logical thing is they become personal trainers. Yes, my name is Greg Justice, and I am a personal fitness trainer. I am also the CEO and co-founder of the National Corporate Fitness Institute, and as Dan mentioned, the owner of AYC Health and Fitness, which is Kansas City's original personal fitness training studio. We are celebrating our 30th anniversary this year. And again, as Dan mentioned, I authored the book Lies and Myths About Corporate Wellness as a platform of credibility into the corporate wellness sector. Now, my first job out of graduate school after starting my personal training business was as a corporate wellness supervisor. So I learned the corporate wellness industry many, many years ago, and have actually been part of the corporate wellness industry for 30 years, paralleled with my personal fitness training center. Now, again, the reason I wrote Lies and Myths About Corporate Wellness is because of a credibility issue. I was known as a personal trainer, and I like to use that introduction, the those who can do introduction, because there's a little bit of truth from the standpoint of perception of our industry with the general population, right? A lot of times we're not treated with the credibility we deserve. A lot of times people think we're just a bunch of meatheads that like to lift heavy things. And now, that doesn't mean we don't like to lift heavy things, and but certainly I think we have a lot more to offer than a lot of people realize. But this book, Lies and Myths About Corporate Wellness, helped me to get over that perception that people had of being a personal trainer and being in just the fitness industry. It gave me credibility so that I could cross into the corporate wellness market and grow my personal training business under the umbrella in the corporate wellness market. So, and I'm going to share actually a couple stories here in a little bit specific to that credibility gap that sometimes we have in our industry. Now, before we get started, I wanted to share this article from the February 2016 issue of Inc. magazine. It's the issue with Kevin Plank, who is the CEO of Under Armour. And in that February 2016 issue, there's an article titled "The Best Industries for Starting a Business Right Now." And as you can see, you've got fraud detection software, you've got drone manufacturing, you've got biometric scanning software, but at the top of the list is corporate wellness with a projected $10.5 billion of revenue over the next 5 years. Yes, that's billion with a B, right? Now, corporate wellness programs are expected to boom as businesses look for ways to get a handle on their healthcare costs. Now, it's actually been reported that for each dollar a business owner invests in disease management services, they can expect a return of $3.80 in savings, productivity, and other benefits, according to a report by a very credible source called the RAND Corporation. Now, personal trainers and gym owners are perfectly positioned to step up to the plate and earn a piece of that $10.5 billion pie. And the coolest thing is that the slowest times in your personal training gym is actually the busiest time in the corporate setting. So you can actually keep your trainers busy all day long if you want. Now, before we begin with any of our corporate clients, we always do what's called a needs assessment survey to see what type of programming they really want. Because, you know, the worst thing you can do is go in and put a bunch of programs into a corporate facility and no one's interested in it, right? So we always do this needs assessment survey to see what types of programming that they want. It also allows us to learn a little bit more about them as an individual, about what makes them tick. One of the questions that we like to ask is, what obstacles are currently keeping you from working out? And the 3 most common excuses or reasons, whatever you want to call it, are time, location, and money. And usually in that order, right? They say, I just don't have the time to work out, or the location isn't convenient to work out, right? Or I can't afford it. Now, by bringing an on-site, company-sponsored fitness program, and we feature the 30-minute workout model in our corporate settings. And by doing that, you actually have overcome all 3 of those objections immediately, right? Because if you bring the program to them and the company pays for it, the 30-minute programs, you've taken all their excuses away from them. So we overcome all those objections right away. So I'm looking forward now to going over the 5 things that a trainer must know when entering the corporate fitness market. And again, as I mentioned, it is a fertile market with a lot of $10.5 billion projected revenue over the next 5 years. So get you a little piece of that pie, but learn these 5 things that you must know as you do enter into the corporate fitness market. First of all, it's important to have that CEO support, right? You need to know the language of corporate wellness. You've got to be able to speak it. You need to understand who exactly your client is. You also have to be respectful of the corporate environment, and you have to go in with clear goals and an action plan. Now let's break these down one by one. First of all, let's start with the need to have CEO or senior level management support. Now, human nature is to follow by example, right? Perhaps the single most important component is CEO or senior level management support, because it all starts at the top. Now, that's why when I coach my coaching clients, that I teach what we call the top-down approach when starting out. And what I mean by that is to take a look at your current client base and figure out which of those people right in front of you are decision makers, influencers, and then everyone else, right? And we call this the low-hanging fruit. Now, I have personally found, and I think you'll find this too, that influencers are equally as valuable as the decision makers. And the reason I say that is because those influencers, they have the ears of those decision makers, right? The decision makers listen to those influencers, and they can actually get you in front of the decision makers very quickly. Now I'm going to tell you two quick stories about the impact that influencers have had in my personal business. One of my clients is the wife of a CEO of a worldwide software company. They have offices all around the world. She also sits on the board of a local hospital and a local university. Now, one day as she was warming up on her treadmill, the Today Show was on in the background, and they were doing a segment on corporate wellness. And it was almost like one of those light bulb moments occurred. You know, she stepped off the treadmill, looked at me, and she said, "Why don't we do this on-site programming in my husband's company?" And of course, my immediate response was, well, by all means, let's do it. Talk to him, get me in front of his HR people, and we'll make it happen. And within a week, I was talking to him, the CEO of this corporation. Now, understand, he was also a client of my business, right? But it's something, you know, that he never really thought about because he had other things to think about, right? But the influencer, his wife, was so passionate about this and bringing this program, my program, into his business that she actually got me in front of him, got his ears, and within a month, we were running 2 classes a week at his corporation, at their headquarters here in Kansas City. Very quickly, those 2 classes turned into 4 classes a week. Very quickly, those 4 classes turned into 8 weekly classes. And as I sit here today doing this webinar, we run 30 weekly classes at that one corporate site. 30 morning, afternoon, and evening classes at that one corporate facility. And it was all because of the power of that one influencer getting me to that decision maker, right? And now, as I mentioned before, she also sits on the board of a local university and a local hospital. Guess what? She got me in front of both of the decision makers there as well, and we got 2 more corporate contracts from that university and the hospital. So the power of that one influencer got me 3 corporate contracts. Now, another example is a client whose husband was the CEO of a international food manufacturing company. Now, again, she and her husband both trained at my facility, but it was she that got her husband to read my book, Lies and Myths About Corporate Wellness. And interestingly, shortly after reading about 3 chapters of Lies and Myths About Corporate Wellness, the CEO came to me and said, "Greg, I always knew you were good at the physical stuff, but I had no idea that you were smart too." Now think about that. I always knew you were good at the physical stuff, but I had no idea you were smart too. Now that goes back to that introduction I gave, right? The credibility issue. And it's a perception, you know, that reality TV pushes on people. You know, I mean, a lot of times we do it to ourselves. Our industry struggles with the credibility problem. So we have to really step outside of that mold and prove that we are more than just good at the physical stuff, right? Now, within 2 weeks, that CEO had me in front of his HR department setting up on-site programming for him and his corporation as well. And that actually turned into about an $80,000 a year corporate contract. So again, the power of that influencer getting me in front of that decision maker was pretty darn powerful. So again, that top-down approach is so important. You have to have that CEO support. And don't underestimate what is right in front of you. Take a look at your own list of clients. I can almost guarantee you'll find quite a bit of that low-hanging fruit to get started. Now, of course, there are a lot of other ways, but let's start with the low-hanging fruit. And again, I think you'll find some pretty powerful, impactful situations that can occur. All right, now secondly, you need to know the language of corporate wellness. Now, the analogy that I like to use here is after my undergraduate work at my university, I went to Spain for a graduation, as a graduation gift from my mom. And 8 of my friends went with me. Unfortunately, 7 of us couldn't speak Spanish, right? Fortunately, we had one person in the group that was a Spanish major, did her Spanish minor in college, so she could speak Spanish. Otherwise, we would have been in a world of trouble. Now, the same thing is relevant in the world of corporate wellness. You need to understand the language, right? And that's one of the reports that Dan has put into the downloads for you. It's a glossary of terms specific to corporate wellness. I'm just going to go over a couple of them here, starting with wellness. What does the word wellness mean? It's actually a word that's been misused quite a bit. In fact, there are many people that use the term wellness in the same context of disease management by medication. Now, what do I mean by that? Okay, let's say you go into a doctor and your doctor tells you you have type 2 diabetes, right? Or high blood pressure. So he gives you the medication to bring that blood pressure down or to control that type 2 diabetes, right? But the truth of the matter is, most of the time, regular exercise and proper nutrition can do the same thing as that medication can do, right? So I'm not talking about wellness being in the same context as disease management by medication. What I'm talking about here is a lifestyle of healthy habits that support and nurture the body and the mind, right? Now, another example is the term VOI, or value on investment. Now, probably most of you are familiar with the term ROI, right? Return on investment. And a lot of times when I talk to the CFO or other financial officers in a company, they'll ask me, okay, what is the return on my investment going to be, right? Now, there's a number that's widely reported as, and I mentioned it earlier, is $3.81 for every dollar invested. But in all honesty, it is truly hard to quantify an absolute return on investment, right? So that's why it's important to get the full picture of health and wellness programs by considering what we call the value on investment, or the VIO. So, or I'm sorry, the VOI. So by definition, value on investment is intangible assets that contribute heavily to an organization's performance. Now think about that. There's a growing body of evidence suggesting that when companies invest in comprehensive health and wellness programs, they see better returns and greater profitability than their competitors that don't have those health and wellness programs. Now, I actually just did an article for Club Industry Magazine that you can read. It's on their website, and it is about just that. It's about quantifying how those companies on the S&P actually, the companies that had a quality health and wellness program for their employees, they actually outperformed their competitors in the stock market. So some pretty cool research. And additionally, those wellness programs, you know, they bring a host of other dividends over time. And what they see is improved workforce morale and lower employee turnover. Think about the value of that. They see less absenteeism and increased presenteeism, which we're going to talk about here in just a second. And they see improved day-to-day operations. So, you know, again, what is the value of keeping your employees longer, not having to do constant turnover, right, having to deal with that? And look at those last two, absenteeism and presenteeism. Now, I don't think I need to explain to you what absenteeism means, right? I mean, that's a pretty self-explanatory term. But in corporate wellness, the term presenteeism is quite relevant, right? And presenteeism is basically the degree to which an employee who is present is fully functioning while they're at work. Now, what does that mean? That means that a body may actually be at their desk, right, performing their daily duties, but they're not performing at a very high level, right? Or if they are, it's because they've had 5 cups of coffee just to keep them awake to get to that 5 o'clock whistle. Where if you bring in an on-site corporate wellness program and you engage your participants and you get them active, they can actually sprint to that 5 o'clock finish line rather than having to have 5 cups of coffee to get there. So presenteeism is about keeping your employees present, engaged, and most importantly, to the bottom line, productive. All right, now, this one is real interesting, and I've had this discussion with a lot of trainers over the course of my coaching corporate fitness instructors. It's very important right off the bat to understand when you go into that corporate setting who the client really is, right? Now, when you go on site and that company hires you to bring your fitness services or your wellness services to that company, they, the company, are your client, not the individual participants. Now, I'm not saying that the individual isn't important. You just need to keep the proper perspective of who you're accountable to, right? By, giving them updates on the HR department, or the CEO, senior level managers may want to know, where you get updates on how engaged the participants are, how well they're doing. Now, also understand you can't give individual results of these participants to the HR department. You're not allowed to do that. But you can, in an aggregate form, tell how many pounds they lost over a 12-week period of time as a group, but not individually. There are HIPAA violations if you do that individually. But you can report in aggregate form how the program is progressing. And so just understand the difference between the individual and the company, and that the company here in this context is who is paying you, and they are your client. All right, now the next one here, this is an interesting, because I had to learn this one the hard way. All right, this is real important to understand the need to be respectful of the corporate environment. Right now, when you go into a corporate facility, it's not the same as going into your own bricks and mortar facility or going out into the park and running your boot camps or your fitness classes outside, right? And again, as I said, I learned this lesson the hard way. Several years ago, we were hired to design and program an on-site corporate facility, right? Now, I got to tell you, I spent many hours putting everything together and building our training team to support this program. I mean, we thought we had covered everything from top to bottom. But what I didn't take into consideration was the area surrounding the actual physical gym in the corporate environment. So as we began our first session, my instructor cranked up that music, started motivating them like he does in his outdoor or indoor boot camps at our facility. A little bit of yelling and screaming going on, motivating at the top of his lungs. And unfortunately, what I didn't realize is right next door to the gym in that corporate facility was the office of a computer programmer who wasn't real pleased with the volume of the music or the excitement level of my instructor, right? So from that point on, we had to put a governor on that music. We had to limit how loud that music was able to be turned, and we had to kind of temper back my instructor's excitement, right? So it doesn't mean he's not still motivating, but we had to bring the volume under control, because in the corporate setting, it was a little different environment than our bricks and mortar facility. So understand that, you know, you're a guest there. Be professional. Dress the part, look the part, and then act the part when you're in their facility, right? You're a guest. You're actually being paid to be there. So again, very important to be professional when you're in that corporate environment. So be very respectful of not only the sound level, but the overall environment of the corporate setting. Okay, and then fifth and finally, so important to have clear goals and an action plan, right? Now, simply stated, you cannot get where you're going if you don't know where it is. Successful wellness programs are designed to meet the needs and interests of the employees. And as I mentioned earlier, that's why we always survey our clients to see what they actually want from us. And it also gives the senior level management team a snapshot of what their employees want and need. Because like I said, we do more than just ask them what exercise programs they want, right? Of course we ask that. But we also get inside of who they are. We ask a whole lot more detailed information about them that we can then report to the senior level management, again, in aggregate form. Now, let me tell you a quick story about one of our corporate clients, actually North America's largest pasta manufacturer. They had 5 locations spread across the United States, and we surveyed the entire corporate body, right? So all 5 locations we surveyed. And then we broke down those surveys into 5 individual areas and then gave this, it was probably about 1.5 inches thick, binder of results to the CEO, right? And when I gave the CEO the results of that survey, he kind of looked at me incredulously and said, wow, that's an amazing amount of material. About a week later, that CEO came to me and he said, Greg, I got to tell you, I learned more about my company from this survey than I knew in the 3 years prior as the CEO of this business. Now again, think about the impact of that. I gave that CEO more information than he knew about his company from his employees' words than he knew in the 3 years previous to that report. So again, that elevated me in his eyes and elevated my credibility as to what we do and what we provide, right? And so it also gave us, through that surveying, clear goals about what we needed to accomplish, what programs they wanted, right? We had the action plan in place, and it was a matter of just implementing it and then reporting to the HR department. One thing I got to be honest with you here, when you deal with an HR department, the last thing that they want is to see a person come in and say, okay, we're going to bring this program into you, you take care of all the paperwork. That's the last thing they want to hear. So we always try to take care of about 99% of all the administrative duties with, relative to what we bring on site. We do all the sign-ups, we do all the instructional things, we do all the waivers and reporting, because HR people, they have a lot of paperwork they have to deal with anyways, right? So the only paperwork basically that they have to deal with is when we give them a report on a regular basis of how the program is progressing. And they love that because then they can, going back to that value on investment, it's more quantifiable when they can see the value of the engagement of their employees. So very important to have clear goals and an action plan. And SurveyMonkey actually has a free plan, I think, that you can do up to a 10-question survey, and you can get a very, very good action plan based on those 10 questions that you ask in a free setting through SurveyMonkey. We do a little more extensive surveys in my business, but certainly to get started, you don't have to do that. So we'll just summarize real quick about the importance of the CEO support, the need to know the language when you talk about corporate wellness to the HR department or the wellness committees. Important to understand who your client actually is, and we know it's the corporation, not the individuals, right? How important it is to be respectful of that environment when you go on site, and of course what we just talked about, having clear goals and an action plan to set yourself up for success. So thank you so much. I covered a lot of ground there in about 20 minutes. And if you want more information, feel free to email me at info@ncfinstitute.com. And we will open it up for questions and answer as many questions as we can here.
All right, very good. Thanks so much, Greg. Again, just want to remind everyone there are 2 handouts down in the handout area. They should be able to just grab those and download those. So corporate glossary terms and a special report. We got a great question from Joel, I think, to start you off. He asks, question about their location versus our gym location. We sit in the middle of corporations, all within 3 to 5 miles from our location. Would you suggest still having the program on site or at our location?
Absolutely, 100%. Without any reservations, I will tell you you'll have much more success in the long run if you go to them rather than have them come to you. Now, the key there is if you have, and I'm not saying you can't be somewhat successful by having them come to you, but what you'll find is the people that come to you are going to go to a gym anyways, right? The key with corporate fitness is you want to engage those that would otherwise never consider working out, right? By bringing it into a non-threatening environment. A lot of people, believe it or not, are afraid of gyms. They're very intimidated, right? And so by bringing it into their world, you're going to have a much more likely participant engage in the process. And again, that's the whole key, is we want to engage them in the process. What we have found is that when a company will give, sponsor these types of programs where they go off-site, like they go to your gym, that the engagement is a heck of a lot lower than when we take the program to them. Again, it's all a matter of convenience, right? 30 minutes in, 30 minutes out, man, that takes care of everything. Even though you're in the middle of a bunch of companies, there's still a little bit of travel time to get there. And what we want to do by bringing it on site is to get them in, to get them out, and get them back to their productive day as quickly as possible with a safe, results-oriented workout. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that really hits it, Greg. Joel asks a follow-up question here. In your book, do you cover how much to charge for these programs?
Yeah, we talk a little bit about that in the book. I'd be happy to talk to you more specifically, but that's really relative to your geographic area, right? I'll give you an example. One of our corporate sites here in Kansas City, we charge about $130 an hour to take a program on site. That same program in New York City, I charge $250 an hour.
Sure.
Right? So you have to know your geographic area and what the market will bear. I'll give you another example of that. When I started my personal training business in May of 1986, there were no other personal training businesses in Kansas City, right? The only thing I had to go on was a book called Body by Jake, Jake Steinfeld. I don't know if you guys will remember that, right? I bought this book for $1 in 1984 and was reading it and thinking, man, I could do this here in Kansas City. Well, the problem was he was in Hollywood. He was charging, now roll the clock back to the early 1980s for perspective here. He was charging $250 for a 30-minute workout in 1980, right? So I knew that I couldn't do that in Kansas City or I'd go out of business pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So I had to, but you could do that when your clients were Steven Spielberg and Harrison Ford, the Hollywood elite. That's who he was working with. So in Kansas City, it was a much more conservative market, and I ended up charging, I think back then, $25 or $30 an hour. Now I'm $140 an hour for my personal training services. So you see, it's all relative to your demographic, to your geographic location. I would be happy to talk to, who was this?
Joel, that was Joel.
Joel, I'd be happy to, you can email me and I'll be happy to answer that question or help you through that process for your specific geographic area.
Great. Linda's asking about equipment. So since you're taking it to their site, do you bring equipment? Do you just do body weight? How do you handle that?
Okay, both ways. And in fact, is my screen still sharing?
It is, yep.
Okay, let me do something here. I'm going to kind of go off script here and show you a couple of examples. Okay, I'm going to show you an example here of some of my corporate facilities that we have done. This first one right here, I actually build gyms. You know, I consult and build and lay out the gyms as well. Here is an example of one of our facilities in Kansas City. It was a multi-million-dollar project. As you can see, I built the boot camp or fitness class area in the middle there. You see where the TRXs come down. You'll see at the bottom, you've got the black battle ropes. You'll see we have the handicap bars that we use on the wall for bands, right, for the classes. And then the cardio equipment that circles looking out over a park. And then on around, there's some weightlifting equipment. But it circles the class area. And I did it this way so that if you didn't want to take the classes, that's fine. You can still do your own workouts, but it didn't interfere with our programming. Now, that's an example of a multi-million-dollar facility. Now, I'm going to show you another one.
But Greg, I'm guessing that you didn't pay for the equipment.
Oh, no. They paid me to come in and consult with them and tell them what equipment to buy.
Right, sure.
Right. And now, that was a multi-million-dollar facility you just saw. The one you see now, not so much. I had a $2,500 budget. Right, so I go from multi-million-dollar budget on one end to $2,000, $2,500 budget on this end, right? Now, fortunately, the wood floors were already there and the mirrors were already there, so I saved some money there. I had a $500 consultation fee, so now I'm down to $2,000, right? So you see we got the suspension hanger or suspension trainers here on the wall. Got a few balls. Once again, we have the bands, and we put the bars on the wall to hook the bands to. And you'll be amazed at how much and then it's a few dumbbells down here, but you'll be amazed how much work you can get done with just the resistance band. Now I'm going to show you one more because we actually had a zero budget on this one. All right, so this is a 400 square foot conference room. Right, so at lunchtime we would come in and we'd move the tables to the side, and believe it or not, just to give you perspective, 400 square feet is about the size of a two-car garage, right?
Yep,
we had
20 by 20, yep.
Yeah, so 19 people in a two-car garage, body weight training and band training, right? So the answer to the question is whatever facilities they have available, the answer is absolutely yes, we can accommodate you. So I showed you three examples on three ends of the spectrum: multi-million-dollar budget, zero budget, little bit of budget.
Yeah.
I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, no, I think that really answers it because you're gonna, and my hunch is you didn't walk into the facility with the $1 million budget and start there. Did you start with something? Did you start a program there before they went for the $1 million budget, or how did that start and develop, or did it start right at the top?
No, absolutely. In fact, in the early 90s, the early 1990s, that company, the CEO came to me and asked me to build out a gym for them, right? 800 square feet we had. So it was an L shape. We built out that gym. Wonderful Cybex equipment. Again, roll the clock back to the early 90s, and we had state-of-the-art equipment for the day and time. About 6 months later, he came to me and said, Greg, you know, you did a great job. The facility is wonderful, but nobody uses it. And I said, well, Tom, that's because you, and I wrote an article about this too. I said, you went by the Field of Dreams mentality. Remember that old movie, Build It and They Will Come?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. Unfortunately, if you build it, they will not come. You've got to build it, program it, and they will come. That's when he said, well, then let's program it, right? So we programmed it The classes immediately took off, and we have not looked back since. I will tell you, about 5 or 6 years into it, they expanded their facilities. He gave me a much larger facility, which you saw there, and basically, a pretty good sized budget, and that was what I was able to create my vision of what a perfect corporate facility would look like. Yeah, so yeah, we started small, we built it, we programmed it, and it has grown amazingly over the many, many years we've been part of it.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Any other questions? Ask your questions now while we got Greg live. Greg, I know your buddy Art is going to be out at our summit in June talking about this very concept, so we look forward to having him. I don't know if you're going to be there yet or not. I know you have a conflict, so but folks that are coming to our summit can certainly learn more about what you guys are doing. We got a couple more questions coming in here before we wrap up. So Dave, Greg, how do other trainers handle the credibility gap?
By proving to them that you are more than just a hunk of meat that lifts heavy things, right? And again, the way I did that was through publishing books, articles. I mean, I write for, my goodness, honestly, I've lost track of the number of industry publications that I write for. I put myself out there, right? I use my base of knowledge from the, what's called experiential knowledge. I know what I have done over the last 30 years. I know what has worked, and I just tell people about it through the written word. And I will tell you the power of that. I never thought I could write. And I'm not saying I'm a great writer by any stretch of the imagination. But one thing that I did, and my office manager taught me this early on, because I had accepted a position with Personal Fitness Professional magazine that Dan, of course, writes for as well. The editor at the time, Shelby Murphy, asked me if I would do a monthly column. And of course I said yes, and then I got real scared because I knew I wasn't a writer, right?
Right.
But my office manager just said, here, relax, sit down, tell me a story. I told her a story, and the next day she came back to me with my words transcribed. And that empowered me, right? So I know a lot of trainers are afraid to write, but there are many transcription services. One is called Rev, R-E-V.com. It's an app that you can put on your phone. You can talk into it. You can push send for $1 a minute. They'll send you back your written word. It's amazing, and it empowers you. So don't be afraid to share what knowledge you have gained through the years of experience you've had in the industry, and put it on paper. Put it in front of people. You've got to prove to them that you're more than just good at the physical stuff, but that you're smart too.
Yeah, good tips. All right, couple more questions here. Linda asks, do you find 30-minute high-intensity classes work best?
Absolutely. Again, the key in a corporate facility is you don't want them knocking out 2 hours a day because of you, right? You're responsible. Again, who is your client? That company is, right? So you've got to make sure that you get in, get out, and let them get back to their productive day. We do a 5-minute warm-up, a 5-minute cool-down, 20 minutes of intensity. And remember, intensity is relative to the individual, right? So it's not a one-size-fits-all program in that sense, because intensity levels will vary. But you've got to get in and get out and allow them to be productive in their workday.
Yeah.
That's
so
why we
to follow up with that, Kim's asking, who pays for the workouts? Are any of the employees ever charged? Are they paying the trainer, or the company's paying for everything?
Yeah, in our experience, at least 90% of the time, 9 out of 10 times, the company pays 100% of it. Now, we have had ones that actually, where they have the employee pay for it. But the majority of hours, we actually are paid by the company, because they, again, the value that they get out of engaging their employees to do something good for them. Right. It's pretty important to that company.
Right. How about insurance? Is this an insurance hassle? How much special insurance do you need to be covered? Is the corporate covering you? How does that work?
Yeah, and you'll have different every time you go to a company, it will have to go through their legal department, and believe me, every time it's a little different situation. Some are a little more sticklers than others, but we have to send them a certificate of insurance, and we, it's just under our umbrella policy, and we just send them that on a yearly basis to let them know that we're updated. In the waiver, again, every company wants this handled differently, so you just go with what the company's legal department wants. Some of them will want to have their name put into your waiver saying that, the employee understands that this is a voluntary program, that they're not required to do that they're taking all the risks. So yeah, that's easily covered through the waiver and the legal departments of each corporation that you deal with independently. But we've never had a problem dealing with them. It's just specifics to what they need in their language.
Great. Yeah. Okay. That totally makes sense. We've had insurance for that sort of stuff as well. So usually your insurance agent can help handle that with you in terms of adding those types of sites and stuff. So
yeah, very simple.
Well, great. Well, Greg, thanks so much for doing this. Thanks for taking your time out of your afternoon to share your wealth of knowledge with us and share your story. Again, if people want to reach out to you directly, info@ncfinstitute.com, that's the best place?
That's a quick, easy place to get through to me, and I will be happy to answer any and all questions that are sent. And Dan, thank you so much for allowing me this opportunity to talk to your group, and I look forward to all the questions.
All right, very good. All right, thanks so much.